Well, Jian Ghomeshi, we have been talking all about him for a long time, and the CBC. Sara MacIntyre has a new twist on this because now the union is getting involved.
Yeah, of course, they had to weigh in yesterday. The Canadian Media Guild, which represents most of the CBC employees, said that they were urging the employees to be careful when or if they participate in this kind of third-party investigation that the CBC's launched. Basically warning them that anything they say can be handed over to CBC management and they could face disciplinary actions from anything that they provide during this third-party investigation, and that they should probably bring a union member with them. Okay,
this is the same union that's already culpable, that already knew about Jian Ghomeshi in the past?
Yeah, I mean, there has been some of the stories that have come out said that there was individual CBC employees that alerted the unions saying that they didn't follow through properly on some of the investigations. So yeah, I mean, there's kind of guilt on
to risk then, yeah.
There's guilt on everybody's hands. I mean, the Howard Levitt, who's the kind of well-known employment lawyer that's been commenting quite frequently on this, has said, it looks like the CBC, is really just trying to whitewash this, because whenever you do a workplace investigation, you really, in order to have it open and transparent for people to feel like they can come forward, you assure them that there's not going to be repercussions for anything that they provide during that investigation. And that's the way that you get to the bottom of something. If there is there's the threat of losing your job if you participate in an investigation, you're less likely to actually participate and fully disclose everything you know in an investigation.
So should there instead be a police investigation?
Well, that's the question, and actually I would suggest that there should be a parliamentary investigation. There is a police investigation into Jian Ghomeshi's actions, particularly while they're conducting that investigation. There may be other individuals that are culpable. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know the law and criminal law that well, but I do think because it is a Crown corporation, and this is all, of course, our tax dollars at work here, and the CBC management looking like that they're really not trying to get to the bottom of this, not really getting any answers. I think that there should be a parliamentary committee looking into this. If this was any other Crown corporation, if this was the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, for example, where it came to light that they were protecting one of their executives who was known to have, sexually assaulted individuals and other employees and harassed other employees, yeah, you would be assured that the CEO of that corporation would be brought before a parliamentary committee and asked, when did you know and what did you do, and how did you allow this to happen in a Crown corporation?
Yeah, I'm sure that they would, and that would happen in any corporation, really, as a good corporate citizen. CBC is obviously not taking that particular tack. They think that they've washed their hands by putting this investigator Rubin in charge. Now, she is reportedly going to tape these conversations, but not allow the employees to have a copy, or how does that work?
Yeah, so basically part of the investigation is that they're going to have volunteers come forward and sit down and talk to this woman about what they knew, when they knew, what they'd heard, what they experienced with respect to Jian Ghomeshi and his alleged behavior at the CBC. And she's allowed to record that, but individuals that are providing that accounts, or that it's not really testimony because it's not a court hearing, won't be able to keep a record of that themselves. And in fact, any recommendations that Janice Rubin makes or conclusions that she makes at the end of this investigation is simply going to the CBC management. It's actually not going to be disclosed to CBC employees, and it's not going to be disclosed to the public. So, in all facets of, an investigation that you would conduct in order to get to the bottom of something, transparency, confidentiality, all of those aspects certainly aren't part of this investigation that's being launched by the CBC.
Okay, so the union has, they're at risk. They have as much to lose as anybody else because they didn't do their job. CBC management has a lot to risk because they didn't do their job, and yet this whole investigation is going on that only those two bodies are going to be able, not even the union, only the management is going to be able to see the evidence, if you will.
The final report, yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, and we're all going to pay for it. And we're paying for it, Pat. Yes, it's our tax dollars because, of course, the CBC is paying for Janice Rubin. And where does CBC get their funding from you and me, the taxpayer? So, yeah, you know, that's why there is a lot of alarm bells going off that, in fact, CBC shouldn't be the organization investigating itself. It's like, you know, I find it kind of funny. It's almost like in the House of Commons right now where you have MPs investigating themselves for claims against, you know, sexual harassment that's happening on the Hill. In the interest of everyone, the accused and an accuser, you want to make sure that it's an independent third-party body that's doing an investigation.
And it's fully transparent.
And it's
I don't mind if it's Janice Rubin coming in and everybody gets a copy, then we know where we stand on this thing. Not that I think people will come forward. I think that's the real risk.
Well, and I think that's the warning bell that the union put off yesterday is basically don't come forward, don't say anything unless you're being forced to. And if you are being forced to, make sure you have a union representative there. So they've basically set up the investigation so that they're not going to get any more information out. They're trying to put the lid on this story. And I think that it really shows the lack of awareness at CBC executive of how bad and how deeply troubled they are as a corporation.
Okay, against that background, you're female. How do you feel about that? It's happening at the CBC, it's happening on Parliament Hill. You know, how does that make you feel?
Well, I think in this time we're really entering dangerous territory where people aren't distinguishing between sexual harassment, sexual assault, and just being a lech and lecherous behavior. These are all varying degrees, and we're just talking about things and making there's accusations that are flying around that impact someone's reputations irreparably, whether or not they're true. That's something that, you know, stays with an individual once that
male
accusation.
And female too.
Male and female. And I think that we have to start being a little bit more responsible about how we're talking about these things. And I think that if you're going to make an accusation, you have to be prepared to come forward. And I think, you know, Parliament Hill in particularly kind of really irritates me because, you know, it's 2014. These are the legislators of the land, and they don't have a sexual harassment policy or procedure in place yet. It's you know, these are individuals that legislate us from birth to death, and they yet don't have a sexual harassment policy or procedure for investigations.
Sara, thanks so much.
Thanks, Pat.
Sara.